You have what it takes. You are worthy. You belong. You deserve this. This is who you are. And for such a time as this, you are to step into this role and be that person, to be that leader for your team, for your company, for your marriage, for your kids. This is your time. Welcome to Evolve Leadership, the arena where high-achieving leaders are challenged to redefine their limits. My name is Angus Nelson. I grew up in the United States and I now live in Lisbon, Portugal. I'm an executive coach and I've spent my career advising and training leaders from startups to Fortune 500 companies. And here's what I've learned. An old, ineffective leadership framework will always keep you on a hamster wheel, consumed with work-life balance, burnout, and stress. Here on the show, each week we'll help you rethink the path to achievement. We'll help you discover new principles, new philosophies to the modern leader. Look, the world is relentlessly changing, demanding a new era of leaders. It's time to redefine your limits. So enter the arena, my friend. It's time to evolve.
Welcome to the Evolve Leadership Show. Angus, I'm fired up today because we have a topic that every leader will face, and how they walk through these seasons makes all the difference, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I just read this article to a buddy of mine, nod to you, David Armano, shout out. He posted this article where this guy, he's 68-year-old engineer. He's just retired from, I believe it was AT&T. And he'd been there for 50 years. Same company for 50 years. Like,
who does that?
That's not the 25-year gold watch. What do you get at 50 years? I have no idea, but this is
titanium
the unicorn.
Watch?
Yeah, titanium watch. I don't know. But this is the like unicorn. Like, who does that these days? Because the average tenure of someone in a role is something like 1.8 years to like 2.4 years. It's like people are not at jobs longer than like 2 years typically. Now, there's some corporate where people will stay longer, but even when you stay at the same company, and this is where there is kind of a collision of these two contrasts, is that guy that was at this job for 50 years actually jumped to different roles within the company. But one of the things he said is he told every boss that he ever had, he just said, leave me alone and let me learn my job. And so he would go into these transitions with an expectation that he's going to have to learn, he's have to grow, he's going to have to adjust. And that's the part I believe is significant, because then we jump into our conversation today, where people are changing roles, changing jobs, even within the company or to another company. And every time you face a transition, something's got to switch in you. Something's got to change. It's a different environment, a different culture, a different energy, a different something. And then related to that, and this is where I want to turn over to you, is these different other scenarios where what does that look like even when you lose a job? Right now, people getting laid off. What happens when you go start a new business? You get that promotion. You now hire a team and expand your headcount. What happens when you get that new round of funding? What happens when you go to that next series and a higher level of expectations and pressures and noise? What happens when you step onto a greater platform or exposure?
Yeah.
Every one of these requires that one key question that every leader asks when he goes through these transitions.
Yeah. And Angus, for when each of us step into these moments, there's this excitement in some ways. Sometimes there's terror, sometimes you're losing a job and, and your 5-year plan is shattered. For many of these things, these are great things, right? Starting your own business, getting a promotion, hiring a team, getting all of a sudden you went viral and you have this larger platform and people are asking you to speak at different stages. And there's this excitement, but then there's also this internal friction that we all run into it. And it is crucial that every leader ask a question at the end we're going to talk about, because if we don't if we don't learn how to handle these transitions, sometimes our internal is going to completely sabotage the external, right? It's so inevitable that there's change in business and leadership. And if we can learn how to process internally as we move forward, the gremlins that come up that want to sabotage, that want to keep us down, that want us to derail us even before we get going, if we can learn how to fight those and anticipate those and really lean into it, it's one of the most opportunities for growth as a leader, wouldn't you say?
For sure. And you and I have talked before about what some leaders go through. We have clients, we have members of our organization, and we get to hear their stories all the time. And we're going to share some of those stories today. But when you look at like a transition from someone like Steve Jobs at Apple, and when he stepped down and sadly passed away, and Tim Cook had to fill those shoes.
Big shoes.
Like, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to handle this? And, one thing he didn't do is he didn't try to be Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to be Tim Cook. And what does that mean for me to be, like, what caliber of Tim Cook do I need to be to step into these new shoes? Or what about when Jack Dorsey, when he left, Square?
That's right.
And now I'm going to start this whole nother company, Twitter. Now known as X, but he's not there anymore. Like, whatever. That's a whole nother story. But that was another transition. Like, I'm going to start a new thing. Who is the Jack Dorsey I need to be in this moment?
Yeah.
And you can go on and on down the line. Reid Hoffman, I left PayPal and now I'm going to go build this LinkedIn thing. And I'm going to completely transform the way that workers and employers and employees can work with these companies, like how they interact, how they engage. You look at so many like larger names and we're like, oh my God, they're amazing. They did all these things. But the truth is, we all do it the same way.
Yeah.
And I think we've done a great job. We're going to keep teasing this out. There's one question you have to ask yourself at every one of these transitions, and keep listening because we're going to get to that question.
Yeah.
But what are some of the common challenges that pop up in these transitions?
Yeah, Angus, you and I have the privilege of talking to so many amazing leaders, and some of these challenges come up. And what's interesting is I think the natural thing is to feel like you're alone in it. Like you're having these internal conflicts and you feel like I'm the only one.
Yeah.
And when you start hearing like, oh, these are very normal things when a leader faces transition, it just normalizes it. It lowers the stakes a little bit. And I think it helps you move through. The one of the main ones is, I'll call it fear and resistance. Sometimes it's a literal physical feeling we feel inside, like one of our members said, I'm feeling it in my chest right now.
Yeah.
Like dealing with when something comes up, a new platform, a new, hiring and leading humans, or stepping into the new thing, there's this resistance that comes up. And you talk about resistance as a way of your body trying to keep you safe, your subconscious. Talk about that for a second before I go through the rest of these.
Yeah. So our fight and flight, part of our brain has been with us through, eons or 6,000 years, depending on how your theology plays out, your science or whatever, like whatever it is, like we have this fight and flight type of mentality when we get into these challenging times. And that fight flight was to save us from saber-toothed tigers, from enemies, from being left out in the cold, all these different things. And now in this day and age, we still have this active part of our brains. And whenever we step into something that creates a lot of emotional surge or fear or uncertainty, we want to go back to what we know. Even if what we once knew was chaos, even if what we once knew wasn't quite what we desired, we're in a place of like, I don't know what I need to be, what do I need to do in this newer, strange environment?
Yeah.
And you start questioning, yourself. And those gremlins, like we talked about in your head, start to like chip away at your confidence. They start to chip away at your abilities, your capacities, or even your track record. Like, what if I screw this one up? Yeah, maybe I was really good at that other thing. When I built that thing, yeah, that was really great, but I was younger, I was smarter, I had more ambition, I took more risk, but now, what if?
Yeah.
And this is the stuff that if you're listening to this and you're raising another round, if you're expanding your team, if you're adding headcount, like, you're having some of these thoughts of like, what if this all goes south? What if this economy breaks into some kind of tragedy? What if World War III starts? Like, these are real things. And as a leader, there are ways to mitigate, ways to understand your capacities that in this question we're going to ask, today on this show, you actually get to see revealed within yourself.
Yeah.
But to get there, that resistance, that
It's
thing
real.
that pushes you back in that box, right? I'm going to give you three, like the three things that oftentimes come up. Now, they may come in a different form. They may have a different shape. They may have a different word. But number one is, am I worthy of this new opportunity, of this new position, of this new company? Am I worthy of this? Like, do I have this worthiness? Like, I don't know. That other guy, man, that person's really, that other person, they went to this school. That other person, they got this money.
Yeah,
this other person, they have this track record and this reputation or this family line, lineage.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'm worthy of that. Or the second one is even, do I deserve this? Maybe you grew up in scarcity. Maybe you've blown it in your past. Maybe you've made mistakes and you're like, well, I can't step into this big thing because I'm not deserving of this thing. And again, the words might be different, but this is a very real thing we find when we start digging deeper into some of our client stories.
Yeah.
And then the last one is, and this one is something that is kind of an overarching that most people get to, is simply, do I have what it takes?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We had a conversation with another one of our guests, Natanya Anderson, and she said, am I enough? Right?
Yeah.
And
Angus,
that's powerful.
I relate to that. And we mentioned this in an earlier podcast. I'd been 20 years in a profession, been really successful in it, and then transitioned into executive coaching. And all of these skill sets lined up exactly. Like, and in my head, I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be great. Right. And yet that one question, do I have what it takes? And am I going to blow it? And I'll, because now I have a family and now they're all counting on me. And, and I had actually a stress attack at one moment. I remember calling you on the phone going, what's happening to my body? I'm like, I can't get out of bed. And it was simply that one gremlin. Do you have what it takes? Yeah, you were successful here. And yeah, you were successful doing, president of online college, but can you do this? And that oftentimes, if we can deal with those internal things, and not just shove them, not just try to ignore them, but if we can actually lean into it and address it, it actually will lead to where we want to go. Angus, you and I were talking to a good buddy of ours who's going through a transition and he's feeling resistance. And what we were encouraging him with is, listen, that resistance is really promotion. You are getting, the universe is promoting you to a greater level of leadership, a greater level of influence, and it's calling you up higher. And so sometimes when we feel resistance, Angus, it's really not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing of like, here's your opportunity to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's your invitation, right? That thing, that pressure, that noise, that whatever. I say it all the time, that in the cave you fear to enter lies the treasure that you seek. It's like, that's the thing. Like, oh my God, I don't know if I know. And yet that's the promotion. So many people will run back to safety. They're going to run back to the comfort zone. But only those people that push through get to see the promised land, get to see, the thing they've been going after. And this is the same thing when you lose a job. As we were saying before, like what happens if you get laid off? Well, what happened when it does? What does this make possible? Can you get a better company? Can you get a better paycheck? Can you get a better team? Can you be a part of a bigger vision? Can you be a part of a bigger movement? Can you be a part of a bigger, like whatever? Mm-hmm. Maybe my leadership can rise to a new level. I can hone in my skills on a whole nother context.
Yeah.
Like when you deal with the unknown and the uncertain, it's not for your demise. Yeah. It's for your elevation. It's for your promotion, like you said. And yet so many of us will go to imposter syndrome, right? Like, oh, I don't belong at this place. Look, I got laid off. Oh, I don't belong at this place. Look, I haven't run this big of a team. I don't belong. Like, I haven't worked in this industry before. I don't belong, whatever, fill in the blank. And all of that is the garbage that fills our heads and say, I need to run back to safety because this transition, this elevation, this invitation, this promotion, I am not worthy, I don't deserve, or I don't have what it takes.
Wow.
It comes up over and over again. And the more that you can see this for what it is and get clear, like my mind is trying to be safe right now. And I'm not stepping into this next thing from a place of I'm risking it all. I'm betting the farm. It's actually me believing that I deserve, that I'm worthy, and I have what it takes.
Yeah.
And something shifts inside when the internal believes you belong.
Yeah.
One of my friends, we were on a plane. I may have told this story before. I don't know if I told you this, but we were on our way to pitch to the American Dental Association. And this consultancy I was a part of, I'm in the plane and I'm having a little bit of my own freak out session and absolute imposter. Like, what in the hell am I doing on this trip with y'all? And he saw I was kind of uncomfortable. I had that like knee shaking thing where my foot was bouncing and my knee was going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down really fast. He said, "You all right?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm good." He's like, No. Are you all right? And I knew this guy well enough. He knew me well enough. And I turned my head, now I'm looking at him eye to eye. And I'm like, I don't know about this, bro. And he said, "Tell me about it." I was like, "Look, I did the prep work. I built all the presentation. I did all the things. I'm ready for that. I don't know if I'm ready to like be in front of this, opportunity." And he put his head down for a second and then he looked back up at me. He said, "When you get an invitation to the party, you belong at the party.
You belong."
And something in my head, like I could get really emotional. It was such a game changer for me. Like I belong. So we went into that meeting and I had a completely different attitude about it.
Yeah.
Where I was cutting jokes and I was using my skill set and contributing to the team. Like it was awesome. It was powerful. Now, unfortunately, we didn't get the gig, but man, I felt good about it being in that room. And
you did belong.
I did belong, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what are those other opportunities that we in and of ourselves have limited ourselves because we bought the lie?
Yeah. And imposter syndrome is one of those things where even though you are operating at a highly productive, high performing in your new role, there is this sense that at some point someone's going to find out that expose you for the fraud that you are, right? And this internal shift can change everything. And Angus, I want to ask you, what is that one question that every leader, as they're walking through transition, must answer in order to be able to successfully transition?
Yeah, I'm going to caveat it with this. Every one of our members goes through what we call the slingshot year, which is an exercise where they plan 12 months into the future and they write down the accomplishments that they foresee in their company, in their revenue, in their families and relationships, et cetera, et cetera. And we map out this whole thing, and then we go deeper and we get a little more granular about, who's going to be impacted and how how are you going to show up, in those moments. How are you going to feel about yourself, blah, blah, blah. And we get into kind of an emotional realm. And the reason why we do that, and of course, there's a lot of other exercises we've gone through to get to this point. But at the end of the day, it is not about the accomplishment. It is not about the achievement. It is not about the thing that you are calling a goal. Because none of that means anything if you don't have what is necessary to sustain it. And that is belief. So the question you have to ask yourself is, who must I be in order to create this thing I see? Who must I be? Yeah. Because we can talk about, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to like get all the right people. I'm going to make all the calls, and I'm going to strive. I'm going to exert. I'm going to manufacture. I'm going to like all of that. And okay, you can make some progress. No sweat. No, I mean, it's lots of sweat actually. I mean, I don't have a problem believing your conviction.
Yeah.
But who is the leader that does these kinds of things? What are that leader's habits? What are that leader's preferences? What is that leader's relationships? What are that leader's disciplines? What is that leader that does those kinds of things? Who are they?
Yeah.
You want to be that leader, right?
Yeah. And that is the internal shift. Angus, we used to use the phrase, who must you become? But I love that we have shifted it, because that idea of who must I become insinuates that you're not there yet, right? It's almost like I'm here and this is my goal up here. And so I'm going to try to become that person. Well, that takes a lot of work. It seems scary, and it's actually not true. The reality is we are this person. That's who we really are. That's who we were made to be. That's who we've always born to be. The universe has worked life out and prepared us for this moment. We're just playing small now. We're playing small back into our fears, our imposter syndrome, all that. And it's one of those, and I wish there was a more modern movie reference, but I love the OG movie, The Matrix. You remember that with Keanu Reeves? And he's supposed to be the person that's going to save the world. And he doesn't believe it. But as soon as he starts seeing it, well, then all of a sudden he can stop bullets. All of a sudden he can change everything. The more and more we see ourselves as that's who I really am. Another analogy is like we're really Superman, but we're covering up playing small with Clark Kent, with all these other behaviors and sabotage and stuff. But what we really need to do is let go of the old, so that we can step into who we really are, wouldn't you say? Let me just pause for a second to say this. There is one trait that you will find in every successful leader, no matter their industry, no matter their role. And that trait is action. And we want to inspire ambitious leaders like you to bet on yourself and take action on those audacious goals that you see in your heart. That's why we created our 90-day accelerator. It's a results-driven, battle-tested framework designed specifically for high-performing leaders like you to get unstuck and propel you towards your goals. And in just 90 days, you won't even recognize the person you used to be. To be a part of this elite community, go to evolveleadership.org. Now, back to the show.
My dad, when I was younger, I used to think this was hilarious. I would walk in and he would see me out of the corner of his eye, or my brother or whatever, and he'd be shaving or, something at the bathroom mirror. And he would look in the mirror and he's like, "You good looking mother, don't you ever die." And I just thought, that was so funny, Dad. That was so funny. Like dad jokes all day, right? For whatever reason, always thought that was funny. And now there's this other attribute that I think about. You good looking mother, you talented mother, you know, whatever. And if you're female, I don't know what word you replace it with. Maybe you can be a mother. I don't know. And it is this conviction of who I already am and always have been.
Yes.
And like, this is the stuff I was just telling you before we got on this. Like I was writing another chapter for the book on this topic, right? Of everything you've done has prepared you for such a time as this. And therefore you are exactly where you need to be right here, right now. Yeah. Every failure, every misstep, every mistake, every layoff, every like failure, everything that you've ever done gave you wisdom, you know, lessons, insights. Like that is now your superpower. That's your advantage, your unfair advantage for the future. Yeah. Because life has prepared you for what life has prepared for you. And now this elevation, this graduation, this coronation, whatever you want to call it, is been established for you right here, right now. And of course you belong. Now, will you give yourself permission to be that leader? Yeah. Will you give yourself permission to step into that realm, to step onto that throne, to step into that power, that presence, that capacity? Because it's already in you. Like, what happens when some of our members take on some of this conviction? Like you and I were talking earlier about your wife, and she had to step into one of these transitions. Like, tell us about that.
Yeah,
that was a great story.
She worked for a really large nursing skilled facility. She's a nurse. That was her training. And she goes into it as a charge nurse or whatever. And very quickly, within 3 years, she was promoted to running the whole place, one of the largest facilities in the area. And her position was one that people dream of ending up at someday in their career. When at the end of my career, when I'm 60, I can finally be, the director of nursing running this large facility. And by the age of 30, she was doing that. And she had most of the nurses were older than her that she was in charge of. And there was this moment where she had to step into and for her, it was a place of faith of I'm ready for this moment. I've been prepared for this moment. Even if I feel like, I'm going to get a lot of flack from older people or whatever, I'm not going to try to overcompensate. I'm just going to be me. And the me who I was that got me here is the same me that's going to continue to grow. And I think that level of staying true to who you are, not trying to overcompensate, but also step into a greater you, a greater growth of you, I think is important. Angus, what about some of our other members?
Well, one, I'm going to contrast like two right off the gate. One was a member and one was actually a conversation I had with somebody a few months ago. And the one I had a conversation with a few months ago was a man who, his family was very successful, had multiple companies, and I'm talking like in the multi-millions. This company was a very, influential company. And it was almost like a scene out of Succession, where the kids who are trying to prove themselves and trying to assert themselves in certain roles, like this guy is wanting to do some things, but he's fearful about what the implications of that are. And I told him during our conversation, I said, everything you've described for me is actually not what a real leader is. And he was kind of taken back. And I said, the strongest person in a room? And he's like, who's that? I said, the person who has nothing to gain, nothing to prove, and nothing to lose.
Wow.
That's the most powerful person in the room. And he got, like, his face went red, like flush. And he's like, you don't understand. I have everything to lose.
Wow.
And he was speaking about, the family money and family legacy, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, and therein lies your problem.
Wow.
You think in your identity that you're nothing without that family, without that name, and without that money. But what if you have the ability to go and create that on your own? What if you have the gift to be able to have that identity, to be that guy?
Yeah.
And it freaked him the hell out. And I'm okay with that because in that moment, I just wanted to tell him truth. And this is where all of us lie I don't mean lie as where we place is we get to this thing is like, we believe the lie that I don't belong, that I can't do this, that I'm not capable of that, ...
Yeah.
But what if you've always been?
Wow.
And furthermore, what if and this is where we get really like nitty gritty.
Mm-hmm.
The nitty gritty is you don't have to have the answers.
Yeah.
You just have to have resourcefulness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if you can hire the right team, get the right people, get the right smarts in the room?
Yeah.
Right? So I share that on one side of the spectrum is someone who isn't willing to be what he's capable of being.
Mm.
Then I have another client who has opened up this metal fabrication company, and he also came out of a family business and left said family business to build his own. Like, I'm going to go do it. So he left another multi-million-dollar company of his family's to go do his own thing in a completely different state.
Yeah.
And as he's building it, he's like, I've got a small team. I'm just doing my thing. And he saw himself as a local company.
Yeah.
I'm serving this city. I'm serving the manufacturers and not the manufacturers, but the builders in this company, or excuse me, in this community. And as we were working together and he started to expand his vision, he started to realize in the same way that his family business and what they were capable of doing, he's like, what am I doing? I can be regional. I can be national.
Mm.
And something shifted in his leadership.
Yeah.
And he went from just hiring anybody with a pulse, for his company, basically, to ratcheting up. He's like, I only hire A-level players because I'm an A-level boss.
Wow.
And now he was just talking to this woman who had retired from this big corporate gig. She doesn't want all the pressure. She used to run like a team of like 300 people. She just wants to have a job where she can have meaning and contribution. And somehow they stumbled upon each other, and he had an interview with her. And I said, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to sell her on the vision. And that's exactly what he did. And she's like, I want to be part of this ride.
Yeah.
And that's being the leader, seeing yourself as that leader, right? And I'll tell you one more story about now. So Mike, one of our earlier members, when he came to me, he was working in the automotive industry. He was in vehicle sales. He actually was in a place where he was the finance guy for this big dealership, and he made great money. He, was able to supply for his family, immensely. But he hated the industry. He hated being that place. He hated the lifestyle and kind of what it breed, what it would breed in some of the attitudes. And it just wasn't his jam. I'm like, well, what do you want to do? What do you, as I say all the time, Spice Girl principle, tell me what you want, what you really, really want. And he said, well, I had gone back to school and I got my degree in, I forget what it was, like some kind of a business management or whatever. He's like, and what I want to do is something like that. Yeah. He said, I want to lead teams. I want to build culture because that's what I'm really good at. I feel like I have a knack for that. And as we were talking, I'm like, well, shoot, man, what is it that you think you can do in building a system? And this is after several weeks. And he said, oh, we'll do this, and this. And I'm like, well, shoot, that thing that you have is a 5-step process. And the acronym is TEAMS. Why don't you just be the TEAMS coach?
I love it.
And he immediately went out, bought the domain, and got the swagger of this is who I am, and went out and started getting his clients. And that conversation went from February until October. In October, he left that job where he was making $200,000 and had replaced his entire income stream with this new company.
Wow.
His own company.
Yeah. And
who must you be?
What I love about that is that it is an internal shift that then manifests on the outside as that powerful leader that we desire to be, aspire to be, but the internal shift is that is who I freaking am. Like, I am that man. I am that woman. I just need to let go of the old. I need to let go of the playing small, in that one example, the regional, or the city thing. No, what about national? Well, what would it take? What kind of leader does that take? And Angus, one of the things that I want to sort of land the plane on this thought, I think there's a lot of different takeaways in order to make that shift or things that we can do. My first thought is to change the inputs, right? Our inner critic is I won't say what our inner critic's not nice.
I'll say it for you. He's an asshole. I'll say it. I'll say it.
Our inner critic will beat us up over and over and over. And it reminds me, I was at the height of my athletic career, Angus, in senior year of baseball in high school. I had two coaches. The first one was a yeller, and he would just come and he'd say, "Timmy, I can't believe you do that. You better not mess up." Right. And it it never motivated me. It just put this undue pressure on me. And if I didn't do it, failure. And I remember this other guy, his name was Eric Daisy, and Coach Daisy, we were in the playoffs. It was a legion, which is basically like the all-star of the whole region. You get together, and we were in the playoffs, and it was tie ball game. We were in the bottom of the ninth. I come up, and he pulls me aside. Eric Daisy, I'll never forget this. He pulled me aside. I'm like, okay, I got to get this hit. And he looks me dead in the eyes. He said, "Tim, you were born for moments like this. Go out and get that hit." And I did. I'll never forget it. It is the power of belief. It is the power of either someone, and who better to believe in yourself than you, of having inputs that are saying, you got this. You got what it takes. You deserve a great life. You are worthy of this role.
I just want to take a moment to you who are listening in your car, doing the dishes, mowing the lawn, out and exercise. You're in the gym. You have what it takes. You are worthy. You belong. You deserve this. This is who you are. And for such a time as this, you are to step into this role and be that person that you know you're capable of, to be that leader for your team, for your company, for your marriage, for your kids, for your legacy. This is your time. And if you're questioning that, I want to remind you in this moment, that voice is a liar. That voice is pushing you back to your safe place, and you've come too far to only come this far. I want to see you be all that you're capable of, to optimize, to maximize who you know yourself to be. And you know you've got more in the tank. You know you have higher capacities, higher capabilities. And the invitation is yours to step into it. So I want to give you some strategies about building your inner game. Number one, step into mindset, habits of someone who thrives and grows in a new role. They say that success leaves clues. People who are doing what you've done, look at their lives. What are their habits? What are some of the things they're doing? Now, I know some would say, I get up at 4:30 in the morning and I run for 45 miles and I swim Angus? 3,000 laps. It's like, I know you're a 4:30 guy, but I'm saying sometimes they sound so outrageous. It's like, my morning routine is never going to be that. It's like, maybe for some successful, but I'm saying those are not necessarily have to be your habits. Shape them to your own. But it does mean if there's a morning routine in that, maybe you need more routine. If there's some books that they're reading, if there's some things they're watching, things they're listening, the inputs they're taking, follow those footsteps. Number two, the power of mentorship. Who can show you the path? Who can show you the way? Who has gone before you? Find someone who has made a similar transition. Even somebody who might even be in the same company and they've gone to higher higher heights, right? Yeah. Number three, build a supportive community around yourself. Who are your cheerleaders, right? Who's your personal board of directors? Like not just the guys you play fantasy football with, not the guys that you're like involved in, like, I don't know, I was gonna say bowling leagues or whatever, golf games or whatever. No, the people that you can have honest conversation. And if you don't have those kinds of people, how can you get those kind of people in your life? You know, you need those kind of women who can speak truth and pull the best out of you. You need those kind of men who are gonna like call it like they see it.
Yeah. Build
a supportive community. Number 4, remember that your past successes, like they are stepping stones. They don't qualify to say, I can't do that again. They say that you were able to figure something out and you didn't know what you were doing back then. What makes you think you have to know what you're doing now? Like you have a figure out ability about you. You have this ability to rise to the occasion. Like all of your past successes have proven that to you. They are your confirmation that you're on the right path, right? And there's a book called The Gap and the Gain. We've talked about this a lot in our membership, is that focus on how far you've come, not to whatever idealism or perfection you think is up there. That's the gap. Where you think perfection is versus where you are is always going to leave you in lack and scarcity and regret. However, if you look at where you started to where you've become, focus on that gain, the momentum, the progress. And lastly, number 5, believe that you are worthy and capable. Believe it so that you can be it. So I don't care what transition you're facing. You are the hero of this story. You are the champion to make manifest what you see before you. And if you're questioning yourself, like, should I do this? Should I not do this? Rather than trying to get all logical about all the ways why you shouldn't, I want to challenge you to make a list of all the reasons or all the facts that prove that you can or that you should. And if you cannot prove it on that list, well, then maybe you can question it. But if you look at that list and you're like, well, damn, let's go, then you can be the leader you need to be in order to accomplish this thing that you see yourself to be.
And friend, we want to be in your corner. We want to be that voice that's not saying you better not fail. We want to be that voice that says you were born for this moment. Go out and do it.
Come on. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. As we wrap up another episode of Evolve Leadership, thank you so much for taking time to invest in you. If there's to be any sustainable growth in your company or even in your relationships, you must grow first. And it's what I love to do for leaders, to help them grow, to challenge their thinking, sharpen self-awareness, to instill an unshakable confidence, and ultimately upgrade their sense of self. And we do this through our proprietary method called Agile EQ Plus, where we're leveraging agile leadership and emotional intelligence. We provide our signature training for individuals, and for businesses, we've designed a unique curriculum for company-wide learning and development. If you'd like to learn more about our training or to schedule a call, you can simply go to evolveleadership.org. And until next time, stay driven, keep climbing, and never stop evolving.